You're having a good time on the couch with your friends. You're having a good time in the bed alone. You're having a good time watching TV. Let us ruin your day. Yay!
Welcome to the just nope. I did a bad job. It's fine. First words.
We're gonna do great.
Welcome to Now It's Ruined, the podcast for people who hate enjoying things. I'm Kate Bridle.
And I'm Larkin Harrington.
And we're a collective mess right now. We've just been having the giggles and then also just depressed as hell. It's just both going
Because what can you do but laugh?
Exactly right. Right before we got on the call, I was like, oh, someone set fire to Renee Good's memorial. That's fun energy to go into this with. Oh, and also that special ed teacher, Linda Davis in Georgia, she died as a result of a car crash that was caused by ICE aggressively trying to catch someone. They have been very known to be using aggressive tactics on the road.
As your family has attested. And also
many people in Minnesota have stories, basically everyone, I think, in the Twin Cities area at this point, of seeing ICE driving aggressively. But yes, my brother-in-law has a firsthand account of it happening to him. Anyway, Linda Davis, R.I.P. She was apparently a really amazing woman and amazing to her students. Special ed teacher taken from us. That's what we need to lose right now.
Let's all light a candle or something for her.
Yeah. Good idea.
Later.
I will do that later. How are all of you? Maybe you're all there right there with us. But here we are. We're all here together. We're all a community, and we're going to have some miserable fun today.
Exactly.
Just brief housekeeping. Minimal. Follow us on the things. Instagram, YouTube, Patreon. Keep spreading the word. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. Our numbers slowed down a little bit in February. Not terribly dramatically, but we like to see it keep going, so just keep talking about it. We appreciate you. Speaking of talking about things, Colin Hanks, we hadn't mentioned him, and I have a somewhat ham-fisted segue, which is that today I was in my screenshots folder on my laptop for work, and I have this screenshot of you trying to recreate a photo of Colin Hanks.
Oh my God.
Just really liked. He's like looking over his shoulder, and we were on FaceTime at some point, like a couple of years ago, and you just decided to try and recreate this Colin Hanks photo. And I found it today and it made me laugh. So.
That's incredible.
Colin Hanks jar, here's a quarter. There we go. I also wanted to hand out a couple of boy cats. I meant to boycat Zoran Mamdani like a while ago, and I dropped the ball. But just, for all the reasons, every conceivable reason, really.
Every possible, yeah.
And then also wanted to hand one out to Stephen Colbert because of his giving the middle finger to the CBS and the Trump administration on many occasions, really, but most recently by interviewing James Tellerico, that guy who's running for Congress in Texas, when he was told that he couldn't do it. CBS told him he couldn't because of the equal time rule. Talk shows are accepted from the equal time rule, but the FCC had kind of said that they might take that exception away. And proactively, CBS was like, well, then you can't do it. Stephen Colbert was like, okay, so is YouTube accepted? And they were like, yes. He was like, okay, then I'm going to have him on and we will only post the interview to YouTube. Done. Boycat, Stephen Colbert.
One of the biggest boycats, yeah. And for forever.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I'll hand things over to Larkin to ruin something that I didn't think I was going to know what it was. And then I accidentally peeked in the folder when I was making these housekeeping show notes. And now I do know what it is, but only know very, very tip-top broad strokes. So I'm excited to learn more.
All right. Today, I am going to ruin for you, Kate, and beloved listeners, Dodger Stadium. Initially, I thought, this is perfect and so timely, and it fits in so well with discussions Kate and I have been having, we all have been having about current events. Wow, so great, because the Super Bowl just happened. And then I was like, Larkin, this is a baseball stadium. Jesus Christ.
I love you. You're not into sports. It's okay.
I had really gotten myself hyped up about it, but it's okay. It is still very relevant. And timely and miserable and frustrating. So still perfect. Moving on from my absurdly glaring cluelessness. How do you feel about baseball, Kate?
You know, I like baseball, actually. I didn't necessarily grow up going to games with my parents, but my sister grew up going to games with my dad. And then she
Oh,
and I used to go to Twins games all the time. Like when she was living in the cities and I was still at home and a teenager, I would go and like sleep over at her apartment. And then we would like go to baseball games and just
oh,
like be relentlessly thirsty about men in baseball pants. We went to an Angels game here when we both wound up living in LA and they were playing the Twins. The Twins won. And as we left the stadium, there were like a few other Minnesota fans there. And we were like, yeah, where are you from? And they were like, we're from Rogers. And we were like, are you kidding me? It's the town right next to this tiny town where we grew up.
oh my God.
Our response was, we could see your water tower from our water tower. Because you can. It's like two tiny Minnesota towns that happen to be right next to each other. And we were like, what are the odds that in
What are
LA
the odds?
we're walking out of, and in all of that stadium of all of the Twins fans, we ran into like two guys who were from the town right next to ours.
That's so cool, though. That's wild.
I like baseball. I've been to Dodger Stadium. I've had a good time there. Do you have any feelings on baseball? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. I just really like yours. That's really sweet. And it has like warm, fuzzy feelings. My connection is my dad. So yours is your sister, mine's my dad. I never went to games. He was sweet enough not to make me do that. He knows everything about baseball and football. We're from Texas, as I think our listeners now know. He has rooted for the same teams my whole life. A true loyal fan, even though his teams have gone through hard times. In talking to my dad about this episode, he was like, I hate the Dodgers. And it's because
A lot of people do.
Yeah. And it has to do with them just like beating up on the Astros. My only other warm association to the sport, which everyone's going to laugh, including you, is the movie Angels in the Outfield. Do you remember that movie?
I do. I know of it. Yes.
Yep. Danny Glover.
Yep.
Christopher Lloyd. It's got Tony Danza, Baby JGL.
Oh, it is Baby JGL.
It's Baby
Holy moly.
JGL.
It wasn't one that we owned, so I didn't watch it a ton, but I remember watching it like at a friend's house.
Oh, yeah.
So it was in my consciousness for sure.
I had no real feelings about the actual sport in the movie. You know, I didn't care about the baseball. It was just like, you know, the story and the warmth of humanity and all the sweet things that baby Larkin loved and still loves. And it's kind of fitting and hilarious because it's about the Los Angeles Angels, which were then the California Angels, I guess. Regardless of my own tepid feelings about it, baseball, as we've said, has historically held and still holds a very firm grip on the hearts of Americans, almost a religion in some respects. It carries this image, at least to me, of like classic 1950s apple pie, soda fountain, good old boy America. You go to a game and get Cracker Jacks and hot dogs and soda, and sometimes someone special or cool throws the first pitch, and it's a whole family affair. Up through the 50s, baseball was the purview of the Northeast and Midwest. In 1950, all 16 of the major league teams were confined to 12 counties along the East Coast. It expanded in tandem with population growth and expansion. So as populations grew and went west, so did baseball. And the counties that ended up with Major League Baseball teams grew really fast. Legacy counties, counties that were home to Major League teams since 1950, were initially the most populated regions with an average of 1.8 million in 1950. This number has declined since then to around 1.6 million by 2016. The expansion counties, the ones who got their teams post 1950, while smaller than the legacy counties early, grew really, really fast. With an average population of only 830,000 in 1950, by 2016, that average was at almost 2.4 million. That is a 1.6% annual growth rate. Comparatively, counties that did not have major league teams either before 1950 or since have grown at a rate of 1.2% annually, and for the most part have an average of less than 100,000 residents.
Have they found that it's actually correlated? Or is it just...
I mean, that wasn't an article about the effects of league teams. So it does affect the growth of a county or city. And along with such rapid population growth, these expansion counties have tended to become more affluent, meaning more people with expendable incomes, meaning more tickets, merchandise, hot dogs, and Cracker Jacks sold. All this to say that while the numbers weren't available back then, It was obvious to the bigwigs at the time that expansion of teams westward in the U.S. was going to be a good idea. The Dodgers were one of the first of these teams. Founded in 1883, they became a part of the league in the 1890s and didn't actually get their name until 1932. The team is originally from Brooklyn, New York, and it is thought that they started as the Brooklyn Atlantics, the name of the failed team prior to their formation. But all of these names prior to them actually settling on the Dodgers, they were all informal or kind of nicknames. Then they were the Brooklyns or the Brooklyn Grays after the color of their uniforms. That lasted for a few years, and then from 1888 to 1898, they were the Brooklyn Bridegrooms. I guess because, 4 of their star players got married. Strange.
That's a choice.
Yeah.
The bridegrooms.
The bridegrooms or the grooms.
Larkin and I used to work at a Perkins where we went to
God.
college. The owners were a husband and wife, and the husband used to come in and be like, "Have you seen my bride?" Like asking after his wife, which was really cute.
I forgot about that.
So I started jokingly referring to Nate as my groom. I would be like, "Have you seen my groom anywhere?
Where has my handsome groom gone?
Where is my groom? I cannot locate my groom."
Then in 1899, they were dubbed the Brooklyn Superbas, after a well-known vaudeville troupe called the Hanlon Superbas, because their team manager was Ned Foxy Hanlon, and he won them the pennant in 1899 and 1900, and his name was Hanlon.
Wow, that's a long way to go for that.
I know. I'm like, that's a stretch, but okay. I guess that's how colloquialisms happen. I don't know.
It's true. Yeah, 6'7", whatever.
6'7", yeah, exactly. And winning the pennant means they get to go to the World Series. As I understand.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So
I said right like I knew for sure, but I assume that sounds right.
That's what I read. And
you did the research. I trust you.
That name lasted until 1911 when they became the Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers. At the time, Brooklyn was under major construction and covered up with streetcars or trolleys that crisscrossed all over the boroughs. The devoted fans that had to navigate this often dangerous maze of trolley tracks became lovingly nicknamed Trolley Dodgers.
Oh.
Yeah, and so the team took on that nickname.
I love that.
Right? It's kind of fun. But then they got a new team manager named William Robinson and became the Brooklyn Robins.
Oh. Yeah. Ego.
Mm-mm.
Don't name stuff after yourself. Just stop.
Unless you're cool. And
if you want to name stuff after yourself that badly, you're not
cool. Let other people name you.
It's like giving yourself a nickname. Let it happen if it's going to happen. If you deserve it, someone else will name something after you. How about that?
Exactly. Maybe the team was like, we're the Robins, but I don't think so. Finally, they landed on the Brooklyn Dodgers again in 1932. The name stuck until their move to LA in 1958, and they became the LA Dodgers. And that move is what this episode is about. We will get to that. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Jackie Robinson, the first Black Major League Baseball player. At the time, Robinson was playing pro baseball in the 40s. Black players only had the option to play for what was called the Negro Leagues, either the Negro National League or the Negro American League. The national, major, and minor leagues of the time, referred to as organized baseball, had established a clear color barrier which prevented Black players from playing on white teams, what the leaders of the sport called a gentleman's agreement. Of course, these leaders denied the existence of such an agreement.
That was the same thing in football, if I recall correctly, because football was initially fully integrated, and then there was the gentleman's agreement, and it was the same thing.
Gentleman's agreement. Like,
you're gross, and you're not a gentleman.
Walk into the ocean. After returning from his military service in World War II, after being court-martialed, acquitted, then honorably discharged for refusing to be moved to the back of a military bus, Robinson came home to launch his career as a pro baseball player. Military buses were not even officially segregated at the time. He was just sitting with a friend's wife, and she looked white.
Oh.
When asked to move, knowing his rights, he said no thank you. So they arrested him for being drunk and insubordinate, probably knowing that since there was no legitimate reason, they needed to come up with one. Much like...
Yeah.
Robinson never drank or even smoked. He followed his dream to play for the Negro League, and he was really good. So good that while playing for the Kansas City Monarchs as a shortstop, he was approached by the manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey.
Oh,
Branch.
Okay.
Branch
Rickey.
Rickey.
Yeah, you'd think that was the other way around. Branch. I don't hate
Branch.
it, to be honest.
Do.
Sounds like something Gwyneth Paltrow would name her kid.
Exactly. And it's like, as a barista, it sounds like one of those moms who comes up and is like, Branch.
Did they give you cow dairy?
Exactly.
He's not supposed to have cow dairy.
He's not supposed to have cow dairy.
It makes him crazy. No processed sugar and no cow dairy for Branch.
What kind of flour do you use? Is it imported? Branch doesn't like imported flour.
He hates
Okay.
it. He'll spit it out. He'll spit it in my face.
Exactly.
Like every food recipe blog that's like, my husband usually throws his plate on the floor when I cook for him, but he actually really likes this recipe. You're like,
But he
are
actually
you
will eat
okay?
this one. Are you fine?
Yeah. No, that's usually what it is. It's like, my kids usually spit in my face.
Projectile poop.
Projectile vomit all over me.
They can't even look at broccoli without shitting on the floor.
But they love this chicken nuggets recipe.
So Branch Rickey invited Robinson to play for the Dodgers farm team, the Montreal Royals. A farm team is either formally or informally associated with a major league parent team with the goal of providing promising athletes experience and a way to nurture and assess new talent, usually with the agreement that successful players have the opportunity to move up to more prestigious teams, namely their parent team.
Oh, right. I have heard of this. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So in 1945, Robinson became the first African American to play for an all-white baseball team against a tidal wave of controversy and adversity. Robinson went on to play for the Dodgers in 1947 and just annihilated, which makes sense with his Thorpe-esque athletic ability. During his time at UCLA, he excelled in not only baseball, but football, basketball, and track and field, becoming the university's first 4-sport letter winner.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And he's a big deal. Over his 9-year career with the Dodgers, his record per the Jackie Robinson Foundation included a .311 batting average, 137 home runs, 734 runs batted in, and 197 stolen bases.
Whoa.
That's incomprehensible to me.
The 700 something RBIs is wow.
Oh, RBIs. Nice. Look at this one. She knows what she's talking about. I
played a little softball in my day. I didn't want to, but I did.
I know. I have a picture of it.
Oh, that's right. You do. Is it the button? Do you have a button?
It's the button.
In
I have the
softball
button.
uniform. Oh, great.
I do. She was like gonna get rid of it, and I was like, "Can I have that?" And she was like,
mine.
Sure.
I won't be keeping it with your blood or anything, I promise.
No, or pieces of your hair that I've collected over the 10 years. He helped the Dodgers beat the New York Yankees in 1955, leading them to win their first World Series championship. He earned the Rookie of the Year award in 1947, the Most Valuable Player award in 1949, and became the first African American inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1962. And a quick tangent here, if I may. And I know I may because this is our show and that's what you're here for. But recently I was stuck in traffic and I thought I'd try out a podcast that was talking about my topic for this episode. And no hate to the podcast or its presenters. There was just some commentary that stood out to me and I just wanted to talk about it because I think it's appropriate. At first I was vibing with the show and I'm not going to call out the pod or anything. I think that's rude and I don't want to slander other pods unless you're Joe Rogan or one of the Paul brothers. I will break any of their jaws. I wanted to talk about this because it rubbed me the wrong way and I think it's worth bringing up. Both hosts are obviously into baseball. That is very clear right off the bat.
Yay. Good job.
And they reasonably and respectfully bring up Robinson in their intro, which I think is fitting and appropriate and solid and cool. But then the guy host adds this rather flippant comment like, hats off to you, Robinson, that must have been tough, or something along those lines, which made me kind of grimace. And then he goes, but this was what's great about baseball and sports in general. It's the great equalizer. Like even a racist bigot asshole can respect a guy's game if he's got game. And I'm super paraphrasing that.
Right.
But it irritated me. First of all, I just hate it. When has sports ever been a great equalizer? I hate the sentiment. I hear it all the time. Kate knows my distaste for sports, but I would like to explain. It's not that I'm generally disinterested. I am, but that's not the point. I have this unshakable dislike for sports because of this notion of pervasive camaraderie and people coming together for their team or putting aside differences for the love of the game. That's just not true for me. I see professional commercialized sport as like this hulking social distraction, billion-dollar industries that will do anything and everything to keep the money coming in. I see it as a big look over here and give us money and don't worry about those other social things happening. Enjoy this and eat your hot dog. It isn't even close to an equalizer when it comes to racism or social justice. Just look at how America reacted to Colin Kaepernick. And second, Robinson was not just like immediately embraced, taken into the fold, and beloved by baseball fans in America. He wasn't admired or even liked. He was ceaselessly abused, hated, and jeered at by fans, other teams, and even his own teammates. They didn't want him. There was no notion of recognizing him for his talent and athleticism despite being black. Dodgers manager Branch Rickey knew how bad the backlash would be and famously told Robinson that he was, quote, looking for a ball player with guts enough not to fight back. In my staunch opinion, sports is not and has never been the great equalizer. I know what these podcasters were trying to say, and they did go on to acknowledge the adversity and abuse that Robinson endured. I think it's an oversimplification and just missing the mark to say that sports is an equalizer. I will pass it over to you, Kate, because I realize that Super Bowl halftime we just had, there are other things at play. Go.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you though, but like I do agree that it is just like it's a money monster now. Like it has become that. I don't think it was back in these days as much. I do think that distraction is valuable. I think we all need to stay sane, especially in times like this. I don't think that it's a bad thing that it's a distraction. I don't think it's baseball or football's job to be political necessarily, but like they do have a platform that they do fail to do things with in a lot of ways. And then they like kind of try and play catch up and then like they'll be like, oh, no, just kidding. We are. But it's only when it's clear that it is popular to do that. So I agree with you on a lot of that. And I think what rubs me the wrong way about the comment, especially the like, even a racist can look at like a black athlete and be like, oh, great. It's like that smacks almost of like fetishization. And it's like, that doesn't mean that it makes that guy unracist. It just means that he's going to have a stereotype, even if it's a quote unquote positive stereotype about black people of like, well, but they sure can run, whatever it is. Right?
Exactly.
And it's really making me think because for my episode, I watched, I don't really talk about O.J. Simpson in my episode. I just kind of mention it. But I rewatched the documentary, The 30 for 30, that's on Netflix, O.J. Made in America, which is really good. They talk about the fact that O.J. wound up being accepted. It was seen a lot as like, oh, this black man is breaking through. He's like the first like hugely commercialized like black man on TV. He was doing this campaign for Hertz and all of this stuff. The point that they make is that he was really distancing himself from his identity as black. And when people would ask him about it, he would be like, I'm not black, I'm OJ, right? Like that was his whole thing, which I get where he was coming from with that.
For sure.
He wanted to be accepted throughout society, but it came kind of at the expense of him speaking up about other things that were going on and civil rights movement and all of that stuff. And obviously he's problematic for a number of other reasons, but it is a really interesting thing that they explore. And it's like people hold him up as this example of like, oh, well, OJ, kind of crossed that line and was accepted. And it's like, yeah, because he disassociated himself from his black identity to a degree. And I can't speak to that because I'm a white lady, but I just find it really interesting. And I feel like that comment that brings that up for me is I'm like, yeah, they'll accept him as long as he's not being too black about it. Right.
Right.
Just shut up and play baseball, but don't talk about like civil rights issues. Right.
Exactly.
Don't raise your fist at the Olympics.
Don't kneel. Don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. As long as you're behaving, we can appreciate your game for your game. Like that just really.
That racist will appreciate him as long as he's not being in his face about the fact that he's a black guy.
So an equalizer it is not,
which is what I think that
opinion.
Misses. Yeah.
Yes,
I know,
exactly.
I agree with you there. I agree with you there. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to my rant and for your thoughts. I was like,
your
I
TED
know
Talk
Kate
was great.
Well, yes, my TED Talk, and for being a guest speaker on my TED Talk. Jackie Robinson's legacy wasn't just a legacy of integrating baseball, but also of championing the civil rights movement. Again, like our beloved Jim Thorpe, Robinson used his fame and celebrity to effect change and to fight for and support his community. He marched, picketed, and was a featured speaker at many rallies. He was a nationally syndicated columnist for 2 papers and used his writing to encourage others to get involved in the cause. Per the Jackie Robinson Foundation, he co-founded the Freedom National Bank of Harlem in 1964, a Black-owned and operated bank. It was established explicitly to financially support African-American communities. He went on to found the Jackie Robinson Construction Company in 1970, with which he hoped to provide housing for low-income people. And his jersey number, 42, was the first number ever to be retired in honor of a player and will not be issued to any new players. And this is across the league.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I bet all of those white people who really liked watching him play baseball got really mad when he started doing all of that. I'm sorry, I'm going to look up Jackie Robinson. I can't just picture his face very clearly.
Yeah.
And since you were
It's a good face.
mentioning a boy cat. Oh, it is a good face.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Sorry. So
No, we are keeping that in.
there's just like this one photo that I ran across where he's just kind of like half smiling and like looking kind of like roguishly
I know
at
exactly.
the camera.
I know exactly which photo that is. Yes, I do. I sure do. Back to the Dodgers in 1957. Then owner and Brooklyn lawyer Walter O'Malley. He was pissed that New York wouldn't build him a new stadium.
Here we go. Starting this shit. Oh my God. Okay.
Yep. He had his eye on LA for a while anyway, and talks with LA Mayor Norris Poulsen were already underway in 1956. And remember Poulsen's name because we're going to talk about him. There was a plan in place already in the city that involved demolishing a slum in Brooklyn in order to build a stadium. But realizing how this would actually be insanely expensive, the city backed out. Even though Nelson Rockefeller was like, I'll help. I guess 30 million was just too much.
I love that Rockefeller. I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all. But that Rockefeller was like, I'll help you wipe out that slum.
Why not?
No problem. I'll help you unhouse a huge chunk of people.
For a stadium. And they, by the way, they weren't even going to upgrade Ebbets Field, which was the stadium that they were using.
Right. Why can't you upgrade the one that you have?
So with no new stadium on the horizon and more financial opportunity out west, the decision was made to move the Dodgers to LA, where they would give O'Malley land for his new stadium. But there were conditions for this move, namely being that the Giants had to go too. And they did. The Dodgers to LA, the Giants to San Francisco. And while New York was royally pissed, California was super duper stoked. The other condition was that the team, the Dodgers, would have to buy the LA Angels and also move Wrigley Field to the city. Kind of a win-win for both. I don't know. Conditions made and met. O'Malley was to receive his allotment of 315 acres of land on which to build his shiny new modern baseball stadium. But unbeknownst to O'Malley, the land would not be taken without a fight. So let's talk about that land. Dodger Stadium was erected atop the beautiful rolling hills of what is now called Chavez Ravine. The region, filled with ravines, canyons, and gullies, was not originally suited for large building projects. Not like any land is or should be, but it was particularly unsuited to large development, especially before advancements in engineering and our unfailing aptitude as humans to raise even mountains to the ground in order to make a buck. It is historied land, it was thriving communal land, and it was stolen and mutilated. The original inhabitants of this region, now known as the Greater Los Angeles Basin, were the Tongva or Gabrielino people. The Tongva people called this over 4,000 square mile area of land Tovangar. It was in 1771 that the Spanish set out to conquer the Tongva people and to enslave them. The Tongva were forced to build a mission, Misión de San Gabriel Arcángel, the origin of the name given to them by their enslavers, Gabrielino. The Spanish continued to pillage, rape, enslave, and spread disease throughout the rest of the territory, all in the name of king and country. And God, of course. The State of California Native American Heritage Commission perfectly describes this as the disease called manifest destiny that was racing through their territory. Starting in 1824, legislatures were repeatedly passed and amended. Land promised was never given, but parceled out to the wealthy elite or stolen to convert into ranches and Indian boarding schools, like Sherman Indian School. First founded in 1892 in Paris, California, then to Riverside in 1910, where it remained, the school aimed to forcefully assimilate the children of local tribes into white society. We have talked about Indian boarding schools or residential schools before, and likely will again, but if you are unfamiliar, these were institutions of corporal punishment, mental, sexual, and physical abuse, forced labor, malnourishment, and death. They were not schools. They were boot camps built simply to torture children into obedience and servitude, to civilize them. In essence, erase their identity, culture, and self.
And if you want to hear a real deep dive, Larkin did a really good one for Indigenous Peoples Day in our Jim Thorpe episode. So, and it's interspersed with us thirsting for Thorpe, so we keep it somewhat light. But it is a rough one. I think we both cried on that one.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah. Again, per the State of California Native American Heritage Commission, treaties of 1851 and 1852, called the 18 Lost Treaties, were found in 1905. The treaties stipulated that 8.5 million acres of land be set aside for reservations and were waiting to be signed by President Fillmore, only to later, in 1905, be found hidden away in a secret compartment of a desk drawer in the Senate archives.
Mysterious.
So strange. In an attempt to rectify this egregious failure, the government enacted a census roll as part of the California Indian Judgment Act of 1928. A whopping 7 cents per acre was to be divided between all approved Native applicants for the census roll. Other censuses would follow, in which the Tongva people were included, but only under the name Gabrielinos, which
Great.
Yeah.
Not their name. Yeah.
Not it. And the Tongva are still, to this day, not recognized by the federal government. And here I use another quote from the State of California Native American Heritage Commission. Quote, "Though we have contributed greatly to the founding of California and are repeatedly acknowledged through our federal government means on an individual basis, to this day we are not allowed to claim and repatriate our ancestors' remains. We are not allowed to participate in the scholarships for Native Americans. We are not allowed to sell our traditional crafts and wares as Native Americans without facing the same $250,000 fine and 5 years imprisonment as any others that appropriate Native culture for monetary gain. Some are not allowed to seek health care at the Indian clinics, yet we are still here, as we have been since the beginning. We are part of this land. We will remain. We will endure because we are Tongva."
Oh. I wasn't fully comprehending what a census roll is. So it's basically recognition of them as like a recognized tribe.
Right.
Okay. So that they have the rights of, I mean, the limit, such as they are, the rights of Native folks okay, wow. This is completely ignorant and stupid of me, but I didn't even realize that was like the U.S. government was in charge of recognizing who a like quote unquote legitimate tribe was.
Right. Like that.
That's horrifying and makes total sense.
It does. And it went over my head too. I was like,
wow.
Oh, wait. And
yeah, I don't know if I ever learned that. Wow.
We're going to call them by their name in the census, the name that was given to them by their enslavers.
Yeah, right. Oh my God.
Which, I mean, I don't know entirely like if that's something that Tongva relate to, and like, because it is Gabrielino / Tongva. So I don't know.
Right. So maybe they've taken it back.
Yeah. Regardless, their land originally, the specific region of land where Dodger Stadium now sits, is now referred to as Chavez Ravine. The ravine itself is a deep arroyo with steep walls nestled into the rolling Elysian Hills, just west of the LA River. And quick note, an arroyo or dry wash is a dry channel left over from streams, rivers, or creeks, which are referred to as ephemeral streams because they are generally short-lived. And I like that.
And another quick note, the LA River is not a river and mostly doesn't have water in it.
Huzzah.
It's where they drag race in Greece.
That's right. Oh my God. Arroyos are found in semi-arid or desert areas. The ravine and its surrounding hills was a Tongva Native American site originally, but was converted into a ranch, a brickyard, and a cemetery by European invaders beginning in 1781. In 1836, motivated by rising political tensions in New Mexico and few opportunities, along with new land incentives for immigrants to California, Julian Antonio Chavez, at 28 years old, made his way to Los Angeles. There, he began petitioning for land and making a name for himself, a name that became more recognized the more land that he acquired. And by 1838, he gained his first political position as assistant mayor. And in 1844, he was granted 83 acres near downtown Los Angeles by the city council. He went on to serve as a councilman himself, as well as water master. The acreage given to him was a hilly landscape along a deep ravine. Part of this land, which became known as Chavez Canyon, was used for a sanatorium for afflicted Chinese and Mexican Americans during the smallpox epidemics of 1850 and 1880. His illustrious political career continued on even after California was admitted as a state. His social and economic prominence was such that as a part of the 1852 Los Angeles 4th of July celebration, there was a mile-long parade that ended at Chavez's vineyard with a barbecue for all.
Oh.
His legacy remains forever remembered as the region called Chavez Ravine. By 1886, much of the land was repurposed as public land called Elysian Park. But that same year, the Los Angeles Brick Company steamrolled in their operation and started blasting into the hillsides. As I said before, the terrain here was not conducive to large-scale development, but it was perfectly suitable for smaller-scale habitation, agriculture, and animal husbandry. 1910 saw the end of Mexican President Porfirio Diaz's 30-year regime, instigating years of instability and violence that many citizens chose to escape by emigrating north, I should say. By the 1920s, small Mexican-American communities had established themselves along the hills of Chavez Ravine. Eventually, there were 3 distinct residential neighborhoods nestled into the hills: Palo Verde, La Loma, and Bishop. Houses, many built by the very people that were to live in them, a school, a grocery, and a church were erected as these communities settled and grew. Animals roamed the hillsides: goats, pigs, and even peacocks.
Find one, make a vow.
Make a vow if you would like. In 1913, concerned about a large number of Mexican-American families living in a dangerous floodplain along the LA River, a lawyer, Marshall Stimson, orchestrated and subsidized a mass relocation of people to Chavez Ravine. About 250 families were relocated, causing a sharp population increase. But the neighborhoods, they just continued to thrive. They had everything they needed. They had religious activities and weddings and a school for their children. These were really tightly knit communities that pulled together and took care of each other. And this was well demonstrated in 1926 when community members banded together to stand up against the brickworks that had been making their life suck for years. Having had enough of the constant blasting, they decided enough was enough and planned to put a stop to the company's operations. By August of that year, the city council adopted an ordinance that prohibited blasting in the area around Chavez Ravine, zoned for residential use. And
Nice.
It was unanimous. Yeah.
Hey, all right. All
Whoop,
right.
whoop.
I know that more terribleness is coming, but it's a moment of hope for the
Right.
time that's
Let's just
required in
cherish-
order to crush it. Yeah.
Exactly. We need to cherish these small moments where this community was like, not us. But this didn't stop the city from setting its sights on Chavez Ravine for other projects. As wealth began to pour into the city of Los Angeles and new equipment and engineering came onto the scene, the previously unmanageable terrain started to look ripe for expansion and development. Just had to somehow get rid of those pesky human beings living there. Chavez Ravine was targeted for a range of different exploits for decades. In 1935, the U.S. military had its eye on a section of Chavez Ravine, seeing it as the perfect spot geographically to set up a naval armory. It was to be one of the largest naval reserve armories and one of the first of the nation. Tucked away in the canyon, it would be effectively hidden and protected from air attacks. But in 1937, the World's Fair bid for the use of the area for what was to be called the Pacific Mercado. It was to be an international exposition, per Franklin D. Roosevelt's proclamation that year, quote, designed to promote closer relations and better understandings among the countries and nations of the world through the furtherance of trade, industry, and cultural arts, by gathering, arranging, and exhibiting the varied cultures of such countries and nations and the origins, progress, and accomplishments in science, the arts, education, industry, business, and transportation of such countries and nations, and by other appropriate means. By the way, that was all commas. And that, quote,
that is a run-on.
there is to be held in said city in the year 1942, in connection with the said Pacific Mercado, a World's Fair commemorating the landing of Cabrillo. Also, only commas.
Good Lord.
Kate and I both now have feelings about the World's Fair. We've talked about it a little bit, and I'm sure we will have an entire string of episodes about it, because yikes. Yep. But if you're wondering who Cabrillo is...
I am.
Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo was a conquistador from the Iberian Peninsula, who fought in Cortez's army to conquer the New World.
Gross.
He led the first European exploratory expedition to the West Coast, landing in what is now San Diego Bay in 1542. They were looking for wealth and gold and all the normal stuff that conquistadors were looking for, as well as possible trade routes. He did not find any riches, though. Instead, his crew of sailors, soldiers, enslaved people, merchants, and a priest encountered the Kumeyaay people. Apparently, this expedition didn't mess with the Kumeyaay people to any lasting effect. That would come later in 1769 with the looming arrival of the mission and fort system. But Cabrillo must have meddled at least a little, because during a clash with an indigenous tribe, he fell and smashed one of his limbs and died. So his expedition was pretty much a failure. But later, people were like, oh, he was the first guy. He did it. He found the West Coast and San Diego Bay, but totally missed San Francisco Bay and died from smashed bones. Let's build a statue. He did it. And have a World's Fair where we honor him by possibly displacing established communities. That seems like it would be on brand for him.
I mean, yeah. The World's Fair we talked about in the Olympics was in honor of the Louisiana Purchase, so par for the fucking course.
Par for the course. But sadly, Cabrillo's 400-year anniversary celebration was not to be. The U.S. Navy was serious about using Chavez Ravine and announced their $1 million plan for an armory. That same year, the city also had plans proposing a new limited access highway that would cut directly through Chavez Ravine. But the Navy got its way with the help of the WPA, who funded it. The WPA being the Works Progress Administration, which I won't get into because I have other things to talk about and the government agency stuff overwhelms me. But
yeah.
Like everything you look into, it's like this agency, and it's a part of this. I'm like, I have to take a full civics course to understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But essentially, it was established to provide employment for millions of job seekers through public works projects like roads, schools, public housing, parks, etc., public infrastructure building and maintenance. Apparently, and according to Wikipedia, I'm sorry, I was not going to do a deep dive on this.
Tisk, tisk.
Yes. The WPA played a big part in the construction and staffing of Japanese American internment camps. So, yeah. So, the Navy got their armory and didn't displace any Chavez Ravine residents, but they never got to test their theory that they were hidden from enemy air attack because no bombers or aircraft ever appeared. Not to say it was not utilized. It saw more than 20,000 sailors pass through over the course of World War II. While it didn't actually store any weaponry or munitions, since it was so close to residential areas, it served as a basic training facility, communications school, recruiting station, and induction center. After the war, Los Angeles suffered a serious housing shortage. Migrant people, thousands of veterans, Japanese Americans who had been imprisoned, all flooded the city and needed housing. Mayor Fletcher Bowron of the time and the City Housing Authority, supported by the National Housing Act of 1949, were looking for some sort of transitional solution and decided on public housing. The plan was 10,000 new public housing units, and Chavez Ravine was chosen as the perfect spot. The city considered it underdeveloped and underutilized, a blighted acreage, but a reasonable distance from downtown.
Yeah. We want to keep the people who need public housing away from the rest of us.
Away.
Put them over there. It's not being utilized except by all those families.
All
that
those
were there
families
and
that
then
live
like
there.
established 3 entire communities. Yeah. Okay.
While the neighborhoods of Chavez Ravine did receive water and electricity from the city and were subjected to the same zoning and property taxes, the neighborhoods were pretty much ignored by the city. Streets were never paved, not a single streetlight installed. So for the city to call it underdeveloped and blighted is a bit rich. Essentially cut off from the rest of the city, there were no roads leading from downtown Los Angeles to Chavez Ravine and no easily accessible way to get into the city. But why go? Mexican Americans couldn't rent or buy housing in Los Angeles as housing was segregated. So many Mexican American residents made their way to Chavez Ravine, slowly increasing its population. By 1950, there were around 600 households. The bucolic lives of the residents of Bishop, Palo Verde, and La Loma, the peaceful life that these communities fought for, all of that would be torn to pieces that same year. Deep breaths.
I'm like, housing for me, as you know, is also just an issue. What I worked in as a lawyer for a couple of years in LA. So it's very.
Yep, this is going to make you big mad. The new public housing development was to be called Elysian Park Heights. The architects in charge of the project, Robert E. Alexander and Richard Neutra, planned for 24 13-story towers and 163 low-rises, which would add up to about 3,600 low-cost apartments. It was an idyllic plan of terraced slopes, gardens, and promenades, strategically using the hilly terrain to their advantage. It was probably a well-meaning venture, at least to begin with. It was initially spearheaded by Frank Wilkinson, the head of the housing authority at the time, as well as a civil rights activist. Raised Methodist, Wilkinson had his heart set on joining the ministry, but after witnessing for the first time the pervasive poverty and suffering on the streets of Chicago as he made his way to the seminary, his faith was shaken. He turned away from the church and religion and chose instead to dedicate his life to fighting poverty. Tasked with the Chavez Ravine Elysian Park Heights project, Wilkinson really felt that he could make a difference. But this plan left no room for the residents of Chavez Ravine, who already lived there.
Which is, I was like, I want to believe public housing. I'm like, yes, we need more of it. We need more of it now. We desperately need to build more public housing.
Desperately.
But like, and I was thinking, oh, okay, if you're saying it's underutilized, there must have been a bunch of space that wasn't being utilized, and that's where they're going to put it. Why am I ever optimistic? I don't understand how this podcast alone has not crushed, let alone just living in reality and having worked with housing authorities. Like, why would I think? Why in the world?
And you're right. Like, I don't understand, because the 3 communities were taking up about 40% of the available land. So you had
60% of that land 60% still there.
Left. The city argued, this is going to get Kate real bad,
incandescent with rage.
She is. She's going to be shaking, and we're going to need a break. The city argued that it was just a slum anyway, using images. Yeah. They selected images specifically to portray the communities as derelict, without infrastructure, nothing like how a city should look. To them, it was just another barrio, an eyesore. I had a general understanding of barrio, but I thought I would give a brief explanation. It refers to neighborhoods in cities comprised mostly of Spanish-speaking communities. It is a term generally used most often in the southwestern part of the U.S. Again, thank you to our friends over at Britannica for their unbiased definition of what a barrio is. Pretty much every other source for this definition was like, poor Spanish-speaking areas where all those poor people are. And I'm like, yes, these communities are generally less affluent, and this is structural racism forever at work. But
for a reason, yeah.
So for this exciting new venture to proceed, everything apparently would need to be razed to the ground. The people would have to go. So in July of 1950, the Housing Authority sent this letter to each of the residents of Chavez Ravine. To the families of the Palo Verde and Chavez Ravine areas, this letter is to inform you that a public housing development will be built on this location for families of low income. The attached map shows the property that is going to be used. The house you are living in is included. Within a short time, surveyors will be working in your neighborhood. Later, you will be visited by representatives of the Housing Authority who will ask you to allow them to inspect your house in order to estimate its value. Title investigators will also visit you. And they do add afterwards, you should be sure that any person who comes to your house has proper identification.
If you get into this, I apologize. But people who refuse to go, I'm sure they don't have a right to they can't just take your house.
But they do.
Except they can because there's constitutional, okay. Just my con law class just came back to me. Government takings clause. Okay, great.
Oh, yeah. So the letter does go on to say where their offices are and how to contact the housing authority, and ends with, we want to assure you that it is our intention to help you and work with you in any way possible. Later, though, they added that existing residents would be prioritized as the first to move in and that they could have first pick. So, but that meant nothing to most of these people who were already homeowners or non-citizens, making them ineligible for low income. So what are you talking about?
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, because their home ownership would give them too many assets to qualify for low income.
Exactly.
Wow. Fuck.
The residents of Chavez Ravine naturally fought back. There were protests, sit-ins. There is a great image of residents staging an organized sit-in outside Mayor Boren's office in 1951. All of them are women. One woman is lounging defiantly on one of his desks.
Oh, I love that.
Right? But the city used the power of eminent domain and began buying properties. Miss Lawyer Lady, I don't know if you'd like the floor. I also have the definition from your alma mater.
Oh, yes, please do define eminent domain because I'm not going to be able. Again, I learned it at some point. Can I say it right now? Nope. I was not a constitutional law focused person.
I wasn't going to put you on the spot. I just thought I would offer the floor. But per the Legal Information Institute of your alma mater, Cornell, eminent domain refers to the power of the government to take private property and convert it into public use, referred to as a taking. The Fifth Amendment provides that the government may only exercise this power if they provide just compensation to the property owners. A taking may be the actual seizure of property by the government, or the taking may be in the form of a regulatory taking, which occurs when the government restricts a person's use of their property to the point of it constituting a taking. God, lawyer talk makes me want to jump off of something tall.
God, try reading it for 3 straight years. That's why
I don't
barely read for pleasure anymore.
In this case, eminent domain would fall under the category of a public use requirement. And the term just compensation comes up a lot in the definition of eminent domain, which I imagine provides a lot of loopholes and is likely often subjective. But essentially, those residents who refuse to sell would have their property forcibly taken from them under the power of eminent domain, which is what the housing authority did and spent around $3 million to do so. Some residents tried to fight back in court to no avail, and they started condemning buildings. Within 2 years, Chavez Ravine was almost completely abandoned.
Do you know what the compensation per family was offered? For
I
people?
couldn't find that. I do know that the leftover houses were bought for $1 a piece for movie sets. One of them was in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Really?
It was the Finch house. Yeah.
So now we've ruined To Kill a Mockingbird for you. If you watch that movie, just know that house was seized from people who were being displaced. Great.
But buckle up. Here we go. Even more. McCarthyism was alive and well during this time. And what is public housing but an evil socialist agenda, Kate? People were fearful of the encroaching threat of socialism, and public interest groups like CASH, Citizens Against Socialist Housing, they definitely sound cool and not like a bunch of fucking assholes, stoked that fear. At the same time, a leading housing authority official had been accused of being a part of the Communist Party and wasn't answering questions about it. That official was Frank Wilkinson, the minister-to-be who wanted to fix the poverty crisis. After being summoned before the California Anti-Subversive Committee to testify as to whether or not he was a communist, Wilkinson was summarily fired from the project and blacklisted. Later, he would be briefly imprisoned by the House Un-American Activities Community, a House of Representatives committee established to, quote, investigate alleged disloyalty and rebel activities on the part of private citizens, public employees, and organizations suspected of having communist ties, which Wilkinson spent the rest of his life trying to abolish.
A committee I can see being created again in a different context, probably is already in talks.
Probably. All of this, along with outcry from the private sector, caused the public housing project in Chavez Ravine to completely fall apart. The city council changed their tune and wanted to cancel the project and called for a public referendum. The housing authority sued the city, and the California Supreme Court was like, yeah, these are signed federal contracts. You can't cancel it. But the city held the referendum anyway, which resulted in 59% of voters opposed to the project. That was in the summer of 1952. The next year, LA got a new mayor, U.S. Congressman and Republican Norris Poulsen, who won against progressive Boren with his new anti-public housing campaign.
I wouldn't be surprised to see this come back either, but at least as far as we have fallen, I don't know if anyone could run on a stance of anti-public housing, but I'm sure they could. I bet they could.
I think
now I keep thinking it, and I'm like, yeah, they'd be like, it's where all the poor people and the dangerous immigrants
live. People are.
Yep. You're running a pro-homelessness platform. You're like, I'm pro leaving people unhoused.
People on the streets. Yeah,
I'm good with that. Really? Fucking really? Okay.
Poulsen lobbied for the project to finally be abandoned, and Congress was like, fine, but it has to be used for some sort of public purpose. And the land holdings were sold to the city by the housing authority. But there were families still holding out in Chavez Ravine, even as bulldozers ate away at the surrounding houses one by one. These families resisted eviction and fought it out in court. But by 1957, there were only 20 families left, still clinging to their homes and their lives. And this was the year that the Dodgers made their deal with the city. As I mentioned, though, the agreement reached originally was that the land was to be used for public purposes. And there was opposition. Opponents of the deal first argued that this was literally giving away taxpayer money, and they called for another referendum. And the voters approved the deal. They also argued that handing that public land over to the Dodgers, a private party, was illegal. The trial courts were like, yeah, definitely, for
Duh.
sure. Duh. Duh. But the California Supreme Court was like, no, but the public will benefit from this. And the Dodgers will pay taxes. So chill out.
That is such... I'm sure that so many fucked up stuff has come from that precedent. Like a government could just make a deal with some other private entity in advance and be like, listen, we're going to use eminent domain, claim we're building a public works there, and seize all this land from these people, orchestrate a fall through, and then, God damn it.
This is a private entity that is going to benefit, like, exorbitantly from this. And they said it was immaterial because the city doesn't even need that land anymore. So you're exactly right. Like, what sort of fucking precedent is that sending? So forget about that federally signed nonsense about affordable housing and all those families displaced and all that money. The Dodgers are coming to town. On Friday, May 8th, 1959, known as Black Friday by residents of Chavez Ravine, sheriff's deputies came to evict the few remaining families. One of those families, still holding out in Palo Verde, were the Arachigas. They were one of the families that sued to reverse the condemnation of their home, arguing that since the original reason for it being condemned was for the public housing project, and that had been abandoned, the suit was rejected by the court, which ruled that there was no going back once the title had passed to the city. The transaction could not be revoked. So on that Black Friday, officers stormed up the steps of the Arachiga home, kicked down the door, and dragged Aurora Arachiga Vargas, kicking and screaming, outside by her arms and legs. There are several images of this, of Aurora in particular. You can see that it took 4 officers to drag her down the stairs. The matriarch of the Arachiga family and most badass woman, Avrana Arachiga, at 66 years of age, reportedly hurled rocks at the deputies as they assaulted her family.
Girl.
And began removing all of their earthly possessions, their furniture, piece by piece, taking it away. A local newspaper reported that while Avrana threw rocks, she shouted at them in Spanish, "Why don't they play ball in Poulsen's backyard, not in ours?"
Great question.
Great question, Avrana. There's, and I'm going to have a hard time with this.
Okay.
There is a photo of Aurora being arrested in front of her daughter, who is clearly just wailing. And it is so painfully mirrors what is going on right now that it makes you want to wail too. Aurora went to jail for resisting and was held for a month. Another newspaper reported that she suffered what they called a breakdown and that it was recommended she be hospitalized. But she was instead sedated and just thrown into a tent with her family amongst the rubble of her home.
Uh,
It took 19 giant earth movers to move 8 million cubic yards of earth and rock in order to make way for the new stadium. The rolling hills were flattened, ravines and arroyos filled. It took approximately 40,000 cubic yards of concrete and 13 million pounds worth of reinforcing steel to build the structure alone. Some of the precast pieces were simply too big to move, so a 6-acre casting yard was built on site. In order to assemble this massive structure, they needed a German crane that cost $150,000, the largest crane in the North America at the time. It cost a whopping $4.47 million in city and county subsidies and around $23 million all told. Dodger Stadium has the largest seat capacity of any baseball stadium in the U.S., with parking accommodation for 16,000 cars and 113,349 square feet of field. The Dodgers are one of the most globally famous and lucrative baseball franchises in history. Ironically, the ravine itself, after which the area was named, remains intact, meaning that the communities that flourished before being violently removed are actually buried beneath parking lots. Dodger Stadium, now at 64 years old, is the third oldest ballpark. And I find it pertinent to say that the Dodgers lost their very first game in their new stadium in 1962. Not only did the failed public housing project displace and destroy the lives of the Chavez Ravine communities, it also deprived hundreds, if not thousands, of other LA residents access to affordable housing as well. You could say that the stadium brought money to the city. It brought notoriety to LA. The Dodgers have really become a Latinx thing of pride, reclaimed in a way by those communities. But after already destroying homes and communities, wouldn't it have been something to actually provide something more for the people of LA? Construction of this massive new work of engineering, paired with the acquisition of a prestigious major league team, was supposed to be a civic achievement to be proud of. But images in the news of people being torn from their homes, their houses and lives bulldozed into rubble, well, that could take away from the triumph. So it is maybe not so surprising that any references to Chavez Ravine, the community and the land, began to disappear. Like the street signs along Chavez Ravine Road, which were replaced just weeks before adoring fans were about to descend upon the new state-of-the-art stadium. The new signs now identified the road clearly as Stadium Way.
I've driven on that. Yep. Oh.
Yeah.
Yikes. Obviously, that was the calculus. They made the right. They were spending all this money because they knew they were going to make so much money. They always claim that money trickles down to the community, right? Like, it'll be jobs. You can work at the stadium. You can be a parking lot attendant, blah, 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 blah. But like, the amount of money they make versus what those positions make that they'll actually hire the local people for it's such bullshit, and it doesn't trickle down to the community. And a lot of times stadiums, like this case, like displace massive numbers of the community and make things worse for the people who live there because suddenly there's more traffic and it's harder to get where you need to go, and there's more, rowdy fans. I mean, people have been, that one guy got beaten to death outside Dodger Stadium because he was a fan of the opposing team.
And I don't want to be that annoying person that's just like, oh, I hate sports. It doesn't make sense to me. But like, that aspect of it doesn't make sense. You're getting so upset and angry that you're going to kill somebody. It's supposed to be fun.
There's a creator on Instagram, Minnalee Jameson. She's great. And she talks about a lot of stuff that's going on. But she was talking about how people have sports team mentalities now about politics, and that people do the same thing with like fandoms, right? It's like, this is my thing. It's like becomes their whole identity. And then it starts feeling like so personal to people that if anything that goes against that is like a personal insult. That's where that comes from. You beat another fan of another team to death because you've made the Dodgers so intrinsically part of your own identity that you're taking it personally that someone would root against them. And it's just like, there are studies of psychology about that phenomenon that I want to look into because it's interesting and toxic and really toxic. Fucking horrifying.
And it ties into this idea of evil. I've been researching that a little bit, the psychology of evil. The feeling that we humans get is like if something is dirty or bad, that's evil to you. And it's like the very, very basic understanding of evil. So like if you separate yourself with a sports team, like the Giants
Yeah.
to you are actually evil, then we get stuck in this psychological trap that is so strange.
Yeah. If it was just like folks playing baseball in their backyards and like we find responsible places to build stadiums that we can like hang out in and blah, 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 it would be a different story. But sports really will just like the lust that cities have for sports teams will overpower their responsibility to their citizens every fucking time.
Every time.
John Oliver did a really great episode about stadiums in general that I highly recommend. It's from a few years ago. If you can find it, it's great. Cool. Well, next time you go to Dodger Stadium, if you're in the area, or if you see Stadium Way when you're in LA, think about children crying while their mothers are forcibly dragged from their homes in front of them.
Where they were probably playing baseball with their
also
friends.
True. And nothing's gotten better. It's only gotten worse. Congratulations, America.
On that note, I guess, everybody, I'm sorry. This hit a little close to home. Close to home for me, close to home for you and your neighbors. Keep your ear to the ground about ICE presence in your communities. There's some great people out there, and also detainment centers that might be being built in your areas. I just found out that one might be being built in or like a warehouse being used, which I guess is what we do now. So yeah, I don't know. Just if you're really mad about this episode, or if it really hurts your feelings, I'm sorry, but also I'm glad. Use that energy to do something. But also, if you need to just go wrap yourself in a cozy sweater right now and cuddle someone or an animal, go ahead and do that. And tell your friends and enemies about it.
Definitely.
Anyway, we'll let you all go. I'll let this stop.
I'll let this stop.
It needs to stop.
Yes, we'll let it stop now, and we're going to go record something else for misery. And I know that sometimes we get very this is the other thing I've been thinking about, is we get very America focused because that's where we live, and there's just so much horrible shit here, and it's like stuff that we see every day. Sometimes it's typically American that we or stories we hear about. But we've got some other stuff that we can do that's more throughout the world, and I think we have done some, but to anyone listening internationally, I'm sorry if we're so America-centric. It's just,
but it sucks here. It
sucks.
sucks. And you make fun of us.
We're bad.
So
we did bad stuff.
You understand. I know you understand.
Yeah. We've got hammocks coming up for our 1-year anniversary, which is the next in a couple weeks, which is crazy. I can't believe we've been doing this for almost a year.
I can't believe that either.
So that'll be our full-length hammocks episode. Will be out for you for that. Then we're going to upcycle one. Sorry. But for St. Patrick's Day, it's appropriate. It's going to be about the boycott. So that'll be international. That's all about the Irish. And then we'll be back with an awesome guest who we're very excited about. Well, I learned a ton about a lot of things. And I appreciate you delivering the terrible news in your lovely and articulate way as ever.
Oh,
from your nice warm heart. Yep. All right. Go be nice to yourselves and mean to fascists.